Well, hello, hello, everybody. I am Matthew Orr of Wet Ink Games, and this is an episode of Other Ink Thursday where I talk to someone else about their creative work. And this time I'm joined by Nat Mesnard of Scryptid Games and the co-director over there at Scryptid Games. And also, they've got a bunch of other titles, places, fingers in the industry. They work in writing and work in education sub panels. I don't know. I'm going to ask them about all that. Nat, welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I love these kinds of chats about game design and the industry, so it's a delight to be with you today.
Yeah, I mean it's the it I it, for anyone like this is anyone who's watched the channel for years knows that this is the history, but like I used to do at the IGDN, I was the convention coordinator, and I was like, look, I'm here at the con. Let me ask the members what they're up to in our network. And so then I was making little tiny 5-minute interviews for the people who I saw at cons. And then I was like, but there are other members who don't come to cons, so let me talk to them. But then we're not at a con. So then it was like I would talk to them for like an hour. And so there's this whole like season zero of my show, my quote unquote show, is all the interviews I did for the IGDN. And then it was like, after I wasn't convention coordinator anymore over there, I was like, well, I'm going to just continue this, but it's going to be for me. And I'm going to talk to people that I'm curious about what they're up to in the industry. And so, this is like, I don't know, year 3 of that. So, um, I'm curious about what you're up to because I know Scripted Games. We did a game jam together at PAX Unplugged many years ago.
Yeah.
But like but scripted, and we were kind of talking about this before the interview started, and it's sort of like, I guess I'm going to pre-ask this question that we're not going to address it. We're going to go backwards. But like,
Sure.
the scripted is sort of like, feels like all these people just got together and just made this thing. And then now you've got like 6 games and it's like, it seems to have happened very quickly, right? Like once scripted formed, now you've got like 6 games, and like I'm sure there are reasons for that, and I do want to hear about the origins of scripted and like what you're up to now. But I'm going to answer my own question and say that like you don't just get a bunch of game designers together and make a bunch of games without like already being game designers and stuff like that. So we have to go backwards. Um, so when you cast your mind back to like what game sticks in your memory is like that was a game that I like played and liked, and it could be board game, hopscotch, whatever, but like what is like a game that you remember from early in the early period when you're like, oh, this is a game with rules and it like is a thing that exists. It's not just let's play pretend. It's like, no, this has rules. Is there a game that you remember sort of sticking in your mind from early times when you were coming up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I made my way into the RPG industry by working with ninth level games. And so the immediate first place I go to that is not too far in the distant history, but for me it feels like a million years ago when I started making role-playing games. I learned to make role-playing games by working with the polymorph system, which is ninth level games RPG toolkit. And the game that I learned that on was The Excellence, which is this sort of magical princess role playing game where you make these princesses who all have their own realms and then you go on an adventure together. And I just remember really loving that in Polymorph and then in that game specifically, there is a mix of a rule system that has a little bit of crunch, a little bit of teeth, and then a lot of collaborative storytelling. In the excellence, one of the things you do is you decide where the characters end up at the end of the story together.
Mm.
So I loved that because when I was much younger, I was just sort of standard, D&D and like had experienced RPGs through that lens. And I was like, oh, wait, we can all kind of craft this. Like we can decide the final scene and then play towards that. That's really awesome. I'm a big creative writing person. I write poetry, I've published fiction, and I loved the idea in that game of um, just a little bit more of a um, collaborative narrative thing where we're all kind of pulling the different levers instead of only embodying characters and rolling dice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I do want to ask you about the like interaction between fiction writing and sort of the world of fiction publishing and games because those are two set those are not a circle. The Venn diagram there is not a circle. There's an overlap, but it is not a circle. Um, but like is that I'm sure it I mean sure just on a basic level it scratches a totally different itch between like I have a story to tell and I'm gonna decide everything about it and put it out there versus like the six of us are gonna get together and we're gonna, like you were just saying, decide on where these characters are gonna end up, and then we're all gonna move there collaboratively. I mean, that's a very different process. But I guess that I'm just observing. That didn't lead to a question.
Yes.
But I guess my question then is like, how immerse, if you came to more indie role-playing games more as an adult, like were you submitting, uh, how did you become a creative person at all? Were you submitting
Yeah.
stories to, I don't know, the teen competitions back in the day. Like I remember going in high school to like writing workshops and stuff like that because my English teacher was like, you should go to this writing workshop. And so like, you have to write a poem and, go and have it critiqued by like people from other high school. I did that kind of stuff
Yes.
as younger person. So like, are you similarly into the writing world first and then kind of also discover games?
That's a great question. Yeah. So here's how I would describe the way that this went down in my life. When I was a teenager, I wanted to play games. Like I was really curious about it. And I memorably at the local game store, there was a White Wolf game that I tried to get into when I was like 14. And my mom was like, I don't want you going playing with a bunch of strange adult men at a store without me being there. And
Fair,
I
fair,
think,
mom, fair.
like fair mom, like it wasn't other 14-year-olds. And I didn't even think about that because I was like, I just want to play White Wolf. Like, please, like, let me. And I think canonically, kind of that experience, like if you're not like a guy, it's harder to be in the role playing world, especially in that era. And I wanted to pretend with people and make stuff up together so bad. I was like that my whole life, making up worlds. I would do totally made up things with people. I had a friend, this is like legendary in my life, where we made up a riding camp because she was really into horses and I was really into world building. So we combined that and I like helped her architect this whole like sleepaway camp where they ride horses, and I made up all the characters and mapped the place where they were and just really wanted to do that stuff all the time. But then it was a little bit hard for me to be in games because people had a weird reaction to me because I'm not a guy. And I think the industry's in a really different place now.
Mhm.
And because things have shifted over time where there's more space for queer people and women and other queer creators who are like visible front and center, that I could like model myself after and look up to and learn from, and also just discovering the people who have been here the whole time, like over longer periods, I started to be like, oh, like I can find a way to kind of enter back into that. And it isn't a scenario of feeling like a weirdo or feeling unsafe or whatever, which is definitely like, especially like college age, there's a lot of stuff swirling around there of like, where do I go and be? And like, I went to like the first MagFests and stuff, and it was like very different from how MagFest is now. So what I ended up doing, because I was like, I feel like the nerd world is hard for me, as I went into the creative writing world because I was like, okay, that's a place where like maybe I can be a little bit more accepted and do all this storytelling. But then it isn't as collaborative as you're saying. It's like you're there, you're in a secret lair writing your novel, and then you present it to people, and people are like, great book. And I still write novels, but like I think the thing that has always been my like great love is like making stuff up with other people, pretending, and then architecting lore and living in it and figuring out what that is and rolling dice, and all of it is just like that was my dream scenario. And I'm so lucky that I now as a full adult get to actually do that professionally.
Yeah, it is I'm I'm sad for like past Nat because you're describing like, oh, we made up this horse camp thing or whatever. And I'm like, if you had like a 12-year-old today that was like writing a horse camp LARP situation with their friend, like that would just be you could just put that with polymorph or even with
Yep.
the many of the other system. I mean, you could do like a Hayborg hack with that and whatever. I mean, because that's just all those things are open now,
Yes.
and like the models, the through lines exist or whatever, where I would like to think that like a 12-year-old now or a young teen now could just feel like they could just make that a game rather than
Yes.
like making a world and kind of then feeling like they had to go somewhere else to like live it. But
Yes, yes, yes. Well, and the thing that is so different now from when I was a kid is there are game design academic programs. And because of the prevalence of those now and the fact that various many universities have kind of organically grown those spaces, that affects culture as a whole so that people understand it's an option whether or not they're going to like give their kid like college advising that they should go to the game center or whatever. People understand it as a pathway, and there are more cultural resources for kids like that to tap into, and there are a lot of welcoming people who create SRDs that are easy to use, or just general adults who are interested in mentorship of like all kinds of different kids who are into this stuff, so that like a kid like that could show up at their local con or a huge con like Gen Con, and it wouldn't just be like there's a group of strange men who are actually probably really nice because like most people who play role-playing games at local game stores are delightful people, which I wish I could tell my mom that those people would have been cool. But like it's not like that. It's like there are these kind of diverse communities of people who
yeah,
have created resources that even like teenagers can tap into, which is really cool.
yeah. It's so, and you're talking about academia. That's another like kind of a try. The Venn diagram has three big circles, right? I mean, writing and games and education, and well, I'm sure there's more, but like that's I don't know. It's you say that there's that I know there are academic programs, but I know that I talked to at Origins somebody out of Rochester. There's a university there, and I know you're in like New York area, so there's like, I think there's what I'm saying is that lowly Midwesterner that I am, like I don't know that there are games academics programs that are impacting like the local scene where I'm at, but that's like because
Mm-hmm.
New York is bigger than Louisville, Kentucky. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Like, New York is bigger than Louisville. It's fine. The
Yeah, I mean it's cursed because it's like there's New York and then there's the like California, like USC is the big program there. So it's very like we have the situation of like you got to go to the coast, but like that's actually totally not true. And I came up in games in the Midwest, and I think there's grassroots culture going on there that's really special.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely games culture. Like there's this we always are finding out that some other game designer is in Louisville, and there's like, oh, you're here too. Amazing. Great. What is your game? And so there it is happening. I just mean like the trickle down from academia, I don't feel from where I'm at, but that's not to say that that isn't happening because I think there is, the more people who are uh, you see it on applications like a game design degree is welcome or encouraged or whatever. You see it in people who I get pitched games by that are like, "Oh, I went to this. I'm a game designer. I got a degree in it," and like,
Yeah.
will you pay me to make a game? And I'm like, maybe let's,
Well,
like I'm not hiring for game designer. It's like a
yeah, yeah.
one-off, like, will I publish your game? I don't, so there is, anyway, again, we're like not really focused on a question, but like, let me ask a question. So like all of this sort of discovering of games and you described it as coming back to games, but then like that's still far from like I'm gonna I'm gonna co-found a
Mhm.
collective of game designers. Like that's another level of being involved. So like what is
Yeah.
I've heard a while ago I had Bridget and Dustin on, some of your co-scripteds, and they talked about their the founding of scripted games from their point of view. So like what is your, not necessarily what is you what how did it happen from your point of view? Like what is your, and this is like I remember talking to you, I think the first time that I like actually met you, was introduced to you was at the Ninth Level Games booth at probably PAX Unplugged 2022,
Yep.
and you were sort of like, I don't know what I want to do, and my advice was there are no rules, you could do whatever you want, make your own company, make your own games, like I don't know. And then it was after that that I had knew that Scripted was founded. So like I'm not gonna take credit for it, but like it is sort of like you did you went, whether I was the only voice in your head or not, like you went out and did go do that. So like what is that decision, and how did you hook up with Dustin and Bridget and the other members of Scripted and like decide to make your own thing rather than just, I mean, I say just, but like writing
Yeah.
games and selling to other
Yep.
companies is certainly a thing, but
Yep.
writing games and selling them and then taking on the business side of it to do your own stuff is a whole different thing. So like what
Hmm.
was behind that whole process?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So, um, I mean, I have an MFA in creative writing, and that resulted in I've taught creative writing. And then when I moved to New York City, I worked in publishing for a sort of brief, I would say relatively brief period of time. I was in like literary nonprofit, and then I worked for a mid-list indie, and I have always loved publishing. When I was getting my MFA, I got to work for the literary magazine in my grad program, and I really loved it. I loved reading submissions and having intellectual conversations about like what it means to decide to publish a particular piece. So, what we platform is our voice is such an interesting conversation to me. There's ethical and aesthetic considerations around gatekeeping and privilege, and like the opportunity in particular that I really love in publishing is to get to give someone a spotlight who hasn't been spotlit. Like I really just loved like getting to kind of lift someone up and then just discuss their work in this way of taking it seriously. And so I was always like, I really want to do this more. I love it. But then I was like, kind of what I don't know in what capacity I want to do it. And in New York, if you really do want to work in publishing, kind of as a career, and you want to be an editor, there is a kind of career path that you need to do to enter into that I historically do not have. So an example of this is I have an MFA in creative writing, but I when I went to college was a math major. And that makes sense in games, right? Like
I
I
mean,
like
yeah,
but like there's like a whole story behind that, but I didn't major in English, and so
right.
I'm like already like not on the like editor track in traditional publishing, and really struggled to like make career moves there because I didn't really have the right background. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, blah blah blah. And then I kind of like got sucked into games because that's always been the thing that I really like. And eventually I ended up working for Ninth Level. So my partner Patrick, who also is one of the co-founders of Scryptid Games, and I have been designing games just between the two of us for a while. And then we designed an RPG with Ninth Level and published it called Business Wizards. And that resulted ultimately in me working for them part time, to help them do marketing and support their website. And it was such a gift for Heather to work with me because I learned the publishing business for role playing games from her. And I started to feel the good feelings again of like, I love being connected with publishing. I'm completely happy to do even the most menial work when it is connected with publishing. And game publishing, I was like, this is my jam. I love it. I just love the people. I feel finally like I can be here, and like a woman-owned business like Ninth Level was like, hell yeah, like I have a woman boss, like let's go. And so then from that I started then being like, and then you told me there's no rules. And so eventually I was like, if I were to run a small business, which it does, like to your credit and some of the other indie creators who I really love, who are kind of peers for me, seeing the small businesses that existed kind of in the orbit of Ninth Level, who are like a little bit smaller than them, because even when I joined, they were like, to me it was like Titan of the indie RPGs was the feeling. And then they've
Yeah, I
gotten
mean,
even so much bigger now.
Ninth Level is a true. I mean, they're a big, medium-sized company. Like they're
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So, but I started seeing like the little ones, and then the little ones growing. Like Wet Ink was like smaller but big to me, and then now it's like big, big, and like for indies, obviously, because we're all just like trying to make ends meet ultimately. But
sure.
like it gave me a model of being like, well, if I were going to publish and get to do publishing, I could do it as a small business in games like these businesses that cool people are running, and crowdfunding is right there.
Crowdfunding is right
So
there.
like, yeah, yeah. So, oh, and then the other question you asked, sorry to go on and
No,
on.
no. I want. This is your interview. I want to hear what
All
you have to
right.
say.
You also said, how did I connect with Bridget and Dustin?
Yeah,
Um, that's a great story because I actually used to teach online, continuing ed classes that were narrative design and game design classes in a context of an online creative writing. Like, it's not a program, it was like this platform where continuing ed classes were offered, so you could take like 8-week classes in short story writing or poetry, and I taught interactive fiction. So Bridget and Dustin actually took a couple of my classes, and then what ended up happening is the platform closed down, and a bunch of us who had done in like interactive fiction stuff together in the context of my class, we're like, let's all remain in touch. The pandemic is going a little bit like this, we can see each other in person. So we ended up meeting up and being like, let's keep doing games and creative writing stuff together. And at some point we did a retreat together so we could play games and write, and then on the retreat we were like, let's form a small business and publish games, and somehow we stuck with it.
let's do this all the time.
Yes, yes.
So I think you're. I mean, I don't know. Like it's sort of like I don't know if it's been a plan, but I'm sure like you. I mean, you don't have to like read me your business minutes, your business meeting minutes, or anything like that. But like I I think you had Ball of the Wild was already out, I think, before Scripted formed.
Yeah.
So you were able to bring that,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's part of Scripted's catalog then. And then, the Psychic Trash Detectives, I think was another early release from Scripted. I think maybe the first, right? And then that's got
Mm-hmm.
like the follow-up, and then more recently, Scripted has done like a boxed game, and there is kind of like I'm setting up like a narrative here of like
Yep.
increasing project scale and size, like rather than like I have already published this game with another company, but now I'm going to become the publisher of my own thing, and then like book size stuff, and then like boxed size stuff like Assemblage, which I do want to hear all about here in just a
Yeah.
second. So like that's what I'm setting up is like is has it just worked out that way, or has that been sort of a deliberate part of Scripted's growth over the last few years is to try bigger things? And I guess I mean the I Dustin's game. I can see the cover, but I can't remember the name of
Yes, it's
Dustin's
against the gloom.
Against the
Against the
Gloom. Against
gloom.
the Gloom.
Yep.
I wanted to call it Never Say Die, but that's not right. That's
That's
like
his
his
screen
handle or
name.
whatever.
Yeah.
But like that's another book size project, right? That's come in there,
Yep.
and like you've done a lot of books now, and but now a box also. So like I don't know, is it just the way it worked out, or has that been like a plan to try and grow what Scripted is doing and is able to do?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's the kind of nerdy question I love talking about. So thank you for asking it. I will say that when we founded, um, I was very experienced with zine publishing from working with Ninth Level. And that definitely influenced the way I thought about making RPG products. Because that was what I had contributed to, that was what I knew how to sell. I've worked in their booth and I, again, like built their website and did marketing for them for years. And so I had kind of a mental model for books that are like this big that have a one shot role playing game in them. Um, I also think for people who are like game designers who are trying to then become publishing game designers, one shots in zines are a doable publishing project. And like most indie RPG companies, we founded so we could publish our own games and wanted to platform everyone in the company over time. And so that kind of just fits together as a mental model that was what we started with. And then as we've gone on, our so like our tagline for our business is story games for cryptids. And we're definitely kind of a bridge between the creative writing world and the games world. And the idea is sort of like if you identify as a cryptid or you like cryptid vibes, right? Or anything related with that sort of like liminal, surreal, outsider, strangeness, whether you like to see it, you like to be it, whatever, there's something you'll find in our games that you like. That's been the through line rather than necessarily like a particular like format.
Hmm.
So with that being the case, everything is narrative. But then as we've gone on, we've learned more about the industry and about what we can sell beyond just this, and thought about the spaces where we tend to do well, the people that we like to talk to and play games with, and the games that we like to play. And so there's a mix of like traditional, like small business stuff of like doing market analysis. And then also being like, where is like the creative heat and excitement? And for Assemblage specifically, which is our first boxed game and was our first foray into Chinese manufacturing, woo!
Yeah, it's
Just
a
as
step.
Trump tariffs
Oh
happened, we're
yes,
like,
yes.
let's go. But
Yeah, it's
but um the part of the reason we decided to work on that was we were like asking the question of like could we talk to people who tend to fall more in the board game space but are curious about story games. And then the other side to it was this, I really love game like creative get more creative narrative games with cards. Like I love cards. I love a little encapsulated story game that isn't this sprawling 5 hour experience, but is like this little prompty thing that is like a scaffolded conversation. Like I just like
hmm.
doing that with people. And so I was like, I just want to make a game that has that vibe. And that kind of went together in that product. And then we are increasing our scale overall in terms of like our capacity to make bigger projects because we've learned how to do game production more effectively over the last 3 years. um, and so we're really excited now actually that we're going to be coming out with a game that is outside designers, not us. We've signed our first game,
Nice.
and we also are coming with an anthology that is many authors, and you have a game in that
I
anthology that I'm
do. I
incredibly
did a
excited
little,
about.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's that. What is it? The Cryptid Anthology is the name of the project, but that's that you were talking about the sitting in the place between literary publishing and games publishing, and this like I think this Scriptid Anthology is it's stories and games, both
Yep.
together in the same covers. So
Yes. Yeah, and that like our ideal person, and like we have so many people that play our stuff for all kinds of reasons. But there's like this certain kind of person who is a little bit more on the side of creative writing who like wants to get into games. And like that, like remember my story about my own thing of like I wanted to play White Wolf, but then I like ended up doing an MFA in fiction. There's so many people like that.
Yeah,
And when we publish things where it's like there's stories in here, but there's also role-playing games, those people are so excited about it because we're like, you have permission to, you know, this for you. And then they're
mm,
like, I'm so ready. And like the game, like the one you wrote for the Cryptid anthology is so perfect because we have these sort of like liminal, solo-y, like this is a game, but also it's like welcoming for people where writing is a practice for them. And then we're like,
right.
come into our game world.
Well, I I actually you said you said scaffold conversation was a thing you said earlier, and that
Yes.
I at Gen Con this is sort of at Gen Con, which it was like days ago at the time that we're recording this, when I was there. But Story Brewers is a Australian company, and they were at Gen Con for the first time, and they had a game that was on my radar for various reasons, but it's called Saltfish and Almanacs, and it is just that. It is like it is kind of it's this tiny box, about like kind of like a tarot card box size, right? And I was reading through the rules, and I thought it was a board game, but I understood that it had a lot of like narrative elements to it or whatever, so I wanted to check it out. I haven't played it yet, but I got it at the con because again, I didn't want to previously I did not want to ship it from Australia to here, but they brought all their stock and I could just go buy it. But so thank you, Story Brewers, for coming to America so that I could buy this game. But it's just that. It's like there's no quote unquote, there's no board game elements to it. I thought there would be like currency that you were tracking, or maybe like a little market economy, and then you also had these narrative cards. Like, no, 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 it doesn't have any of that. It's just the scaffolded conversation where of you like going around. You lay out the board of cards and you have road tiles and you lay them out, and the road tiles have prompts on them and the towns have prompts on them and the goods you buy have prompts on them, and you just take your wagon around the board and it's all just storytelling, which I think it'll be great. I think it'll be great, and it has like a solo option, so I'm excited to play it. But like anyway, that I have not opened up, but I see the appeal of that kind of a thing for me, who has I've been a journaler my whole life, basically, like since middle school, so like the idea of like, okay, great, you already have that daily practice, but now do it as a spaceman, or now do it as like a community of creatures in a forest, or do it as like a fantasy Central European goods commodity trader or whatever. Like, I'm like, great, give me some prompts. I will do this because I love to do that. So I love solo games and stuff like that. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I could really see the appeal of like both from like like trying to get an individual way of like getting a person excited about it. Like, oh, you want a writing activity that's a little bit different than like, you've seen before. Here's a box about like building a ecological community. And if people are hungry for that, but then also as like a business model where you like are looking for those where are there a lot of those people? It's like, oh, at these writing workshops and at these like
Mhm.
book events and stuff like that. There's all kinds of people that are hungry for that. So
Yes.
smart ideas like all around. Um,
Yes.
so I've described this game, Salvation Almanacs, but it sounds like Assemblage. I've picked up Assemblage. I've looked at it. It's
Yep.
like a 7x7 box-ish, I think. But what would one find inside if they open up Assemblage? Tell us about
Yes.
your game.
Yes, yeah. So Assemblage is a storytelling game, and the tagline is like it's a game of world building and world breaking.
Hmm.
And what that means is basically you open the box and you find a deck of cards. There's also a little pad in there that you kind of use to note down the species you create when you play, because what you do in assemblage is you build an ecosystem of fantasy sci-fi species that um, all have ecological relationships with each other. So the way the world building part, which is the majority of what you do in the game, is world building. And what you do is you take an ecological relationship card and put it between yourself and the player next to you. And so that's things like predator prey, parasitism, symbiosis. And then off of the relationship, you co create the species that each of you are embodying in the game. So you are embodying an entire species of some weird animal or a sentient plant or a bacterium. Whatever it ends up being is based on the setting you choose. And there's some fun settings in the cards. Like there's a psychic one called Brain Forest that I really like. Um, and then the deck of cards has a set of cards that allow you to explore and deepen the ecosystem. So some of the cards let you describe events that happen, intraspecies interactions, and then ultimately the story culminates with an extinction event.
Mm.
So there is an ecological cataclysm happens that you decide, and
Are there like a mini deck of like, you know, asteroid and, oxygen toxicity or whatever? Is there like a
yes,
choices there?
exactly. Yep, exactly. And basically, like what you do is you draw a few of them, and then um, at the beginning of the game, you actually secretly jot down a biological vulnerability that your species has. And then at the end, when you're choosing the cataclysm, um, the game is actually like pick the one that's most likely to make your species go extinct.
Hmm.
Um, and then the storytelling occasion is you pick one species to go extinct, and by design, one dies off completely, and all of the other ones find a way to survive.
But
So in the narrative,
but I assume they're like impacted by all the cross relationships, right? So
absolutely.
if the species that goes extinct is the one that was being parasitized by the others, how do they adapt, right?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So it's like for the group of people, it's like, how do they develop this sort of unpredictable resilience and survival? And then the one person whose species goes extinct narrates the extinction event. And then at the end, there is sort of a telling of like remembering them.
Hmm.
So there's like a grief moment of like, oh my God, like we kind of hated them because they were our predator, but also it's really fucking tragic that they died. Like there's a lot of emotion in it if people are playing it in a serious mindset.
Yeah.
And then, obviously there's plenty of silliness that comes up of like making things up that are like who knows what it is, right? Like it's a worm that wears pants, and people love doing that too, and I love to see that.
Right, right. It is it so I just got done reading Lucas Zeller's Book of Extinction, published by Mage Hand Press, which was Lucas doing a bunch of research about all these extinct animals and then like, but if they were a D&D monster, what would their stat block look like? So but it's this very ecology, like the amount of ecology that is in the book is high, right? And so uh is there a similar sort of like mountain of literature that you went through to like pull from these? Let me, is it a scientifically accurate game in some respects, like the relationships between the species, or is it more notional there or whatever? Could you pitch it as an educational game to like learn these processes because you've consulted the source material for like ecology knowledge? I don't know. I
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't do like a massive dig on like ecology to write this game. And the reason I didn't do that is because what I was interested with it was more about how people do GMless world building. And I wasn't as interested in teaching science. And I've seen some other ecology games that actually, I would say, are better educational games, specifically in teaching natural science and ecology. And what I would say about Assemblage is one of the things I have in the rule book about this is it says you are free to make things up. You do not need to understand science in order to participate in this game. So the vibe is like, if you're familiar with the cartoon series Scavenger's Reign,
I
um,
yes.
it's like weird creatures that maybe what I'm interested more in is like if you just sit someone down and you're like, make up a weird alien body.
Hmm.
What I'm interested in is what does that person come up with? And that's a very interesting question, like almost like as a personality axis, where some people will be like, it's a worm that squirms around in the mud and sticks up one eye, and then other people will be like, it's a saber-toothed rat. And like just seeing what people say when you ask them questions to describe animals. Actually, that's something in my other game that you mentioned earlier in the interview, Ball of the Wild, that I also have played with in that game. And in that game, right, it's like you make up an animal and then you make up a costume that that animal wears, which is another animal, and they perform in the costume of this other animal. And so that's interesting because people are like, what are the two layered animals that I'm
Yeah.
going to play? And then in assemblage, it's like I have to make up this squishy, weird alien body that's a parasite of this other person's weird alien body. And then people have these conversations where it's like, how does my worm attach to your saber-toothed rat? So that was like where I wanted to go with the game, was just like kind of more of like a social experiment of like slightly squishy, like it's not like a rigid, it's rigid
Yeah,
in
yeah.
some ways, but then it's very creatively open. And what do people say when you give them this bounded openness was
Yeah.
the core question.
Yeah. And is there so I'm gonna ask you then about like I mean, obviously playing a game like this, like you can play I my group when I used to have a regular game group, we played Microscope a couple times, and we would
Yep.
play Microscope, and we would develop a whole history of the world, and they'd be like, "Great, now we've got our D&D world, and then we're gonna be this is the history of our D&D world, and then now we're gonna play in it, and like we know that there's the Southern Empire ruled by liches, and we know that." It's this current battle between these two queens, or it's what's happening in the now because we set it all as a table, like we did all that stuff. So like the game of Microscope was then a just a step one of playing another game. And I've done that a couple times. I
Yep.
did another group. We played Microscope, and then we played Thousand Year Old Vampire in the world that we had created, right? So it was like no real history needs to be known because we made up the history first, and then we played Thousand Year Old Vampire. But anyway, the point is that do you see assemblage as having that sort of like afterlife? Is it like it's this one? Is it like a you make the world, you mourn the beast species that goes extinct, you see kind of some impacts from that, and then like that's great, we did it, put it in the box, we'll play again sometime. Or is it like now that you've done that, you can use it for these things? Like I don't know. Would you?
Yes. I have much to say. That's a great question, too. Great question. Yes. Okay, so first of all, yes, I would love for people to use it like that. Um, I first of all, I haven't role played in any of the ones I've created, but I have such a specific memory of some of the ones that I've built. It feels like it would be absolutely trivial to build an adventure in those settings. The thing though is there is actually a really cool project that is forthcoming related to this exact thing. And essentially when we crowdfunded Assemblage, we did it in it was like a collaborative crowdfunding event where there was a shared reward that you would get if you backed Assemblage, and then this other really cool game by a studio called Stop Drop and Roll Games. And they had a game called Why We Fight that is a it's like solo plus, so you can play it solo or as a group. It's sort of like an anti-fascist, like explicitly so, like you're like an insurgent cell like resisting these it's sort of like Nazi punching, like let's these dudes suck, like we have to
Yeah.
create a like community. And so for our shared reward, myself and the other designer of that game, Lori Blake, were like, we'll design another game that merges these two games.
Just
And
simple, simple. How it can be easier.
yes, and that's why we're about to fulfill it now, and it's been like a year and a half, but it's fine. It's going to be a PDF. We may print it later, which would be so cool. And in that game, we actually hacked Assemblage with the Why We Fight system, which is a D6 system, and we set it up so that there's actually a way that you can use assemblage to generate like an ecological like an island, and then use a why we fight system to create a team of scientists that's investigating the assemblage ecosystem and trying to find out the nature of what is biologically going on the island. And in some ways, that was like, I wanted to do that project as a test to see how you could actually introduce assemblage in a context where then we want to build characters who encounter the animals and like weird sentient plants that people make up. And on the journey of that design project, which has been incredibly interesting and weird and good design work, um, it's just been really fun to come up with this system where in the game that we designed, which is called Natural Selection, it's actually a team-based game where you split the people who are playing, and some of them create the assemblage and serve in a little bit of a GM role, and then the other people form teams of scientists and investigate the creatures, which are sort of slowly revealed by the assemblage people. And that has been amazing because it turns this structure into this kind of like world building thing that you do, and it just sets you up to GM like a biological scavenger's reign, or even a little Jurassic
Well,
Parkish
it
kind
sounds,
of.
you know, so on an island, I was thinking Jurassic Park, and
Yes, 100%.
the
Yep.
Annihilation, of course, comes to mind
Also
as well
that.
as like a touchstone for that of like we're going in and we don't know what it is, but we know it's going to be weird, and then it turns out to be weird.
Yes, yes, and it's like works really well for that because like the assemblage thing, it like two people go off to the side and do it, and suddenly they have all these secrets about these crazy things. Like, what are these things? And then there's these like scientists who are like, well, we're just here to try to figure out what's going on this island, and we have these skill sets and buildings and like stuff. We're gonna try to survive, and then you have this encounter where it's like the antagonist is the assemblage, but they're just an ecology of weird animals. They're not evil, they're just dangerous. It's really cool.
I mean, that is a really cool I like everything you've said. That sounds great. Like as a as an outgrowth of that collaboration to like come up with truly another whole game. Um,
Yeah.
or I guess a way to play the two games simultaneously. Yeah, like what is
Yep. Yep.
that overlap, you know? It
Yeah.
is that which I mean that's all really cool. Like is there something that then is like is there I don't know, is there like almost like, oh great, now that we did this should have been in the box from the beginning. So now we need to do a simplest second edition, which comes with like these like extra like endpoints where you can hook on other games to them or something like that. I, I don't that's perhaps too ambitious. I'm just I don't know.
I don't disagree with that though. Like I didn't when I was originally designing it, it was I was just trying to make the game be this thing that I was like I'm trying to create this complete game object. And then after it was like right, like how does it join or expand? And it's a good question. Like we're always still learning game design too, right? Like for
Sure.
me, I would say I'm like intermediate in game design. Like I'm an accomplished teacher and writer, but like one of the amazing things about indie publishing is like it can be part of your learning journey of like
Mm,
if I'm going to make a game that actually has value to other people, what is that game is like a huge creative question that can like level you up from like home brewing stuff that's fun with your friends or creating scaffolded conversations spontaneously with people you like and then turning it into a thing that belongs in a box. And like at the time that I was designing this, I was like, that's at the edge of what I can do as a
mm,
designer. And
mm.
then it's been really fun because I kind of got to the end of that And then I get to have these fun creative questions connected with it that are asking me things like, how could this play a role in a bigger play space? What would a second edition be like? This design work I did with Lori, like, what game is that? Are there other games that use this system? And like, my brain is just like, woo,
Yeah.
like I'm so excited about it. Yeah,
It's like
so maybe, yeah,
the next game you're already you have more knowledge and you're the starting line has moved, right? Like you'll start the
yeah,
next game design with all the experience you have from Assemblage, and so you're kind of back to zero because you haven't designed the next game yet or whatever. But you aren't back to zero because you learned all the stuff, and like you could
yep,
do like you say you could see more things because you've done that now. I don't know.
yeah,
That's a really valuable thing to say out loud. Is that I think every
yep,
game does, because it- yeah, I just we have used the same system at Wet Ink several times now, and like I would hope that by like now that we're going to publish like the seventh or eighth version of our rule set, it's better explained in the book than it was the first time we did it. Like it's the same game, but I hope that we've explained it better because we've gotten better at
yeah,
like knowing what it can do and how to talk about what it does. But like
yes,
it hopefully, I guess other people will be the judge of that, right? But like it is, it is you get better. You do. I love that as like a you can see further and or whatever. I mean, there's 100 analogies, but like whatever.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, the other thing I would say is like I've done a lot of design with polymorph, and I'm really a very experienced polymorph designer. And Pat and I, my partner again, who I mentioned earlier, designed a game for ninth level called Starly Davidson
oh yeah,
that was so much fun. And that was like the culmination of our polymorph work, where we were like, let's make something really weird that uses tarot cards. And it's just such a crazy game where you're like playing as the inner voices of a woman going through a breakup, and you form a motorcycle gang to like, or you're in a motorcycle gang that exists inside this woman, and you're like, we're gonna get you through this breakup. And then you go on a journey through her tarot reading using polymorph to like resolve obstacles in the tarot cards, right? And so
yeah,
like that,
there's
like
a lot of
I was
moving pieces there.
yeah, we were like, we know how to design with this system. We've been designing with this for years. We're going to go so hard with this. And then that, and this is actually like, because I teach game design, I also tell people a great place to start in learning to design games is to use an existing system or to hack an existing system, and over time develop your perspective on that system, which Starley Davidson was like, Pat and I's like, this is when we are given free reign to do whatever we want with polymorph, it's this. And it's just typically like we are maniacs. And so it was like hilarious and absolutely delightful. And it's my favorite game to GM with polymorph. But then if you're like, okay, now I want to create new design, like I want to create something that doesn't have a system, maybe is more like microscope where it's a framework for play. It is hard. Like you're starting with a blank page, and it's like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
it? And I think the thing you're talking about with like, how could it be a world building tool? It just shows you how games, and I feel like you, with your company, you do this too. It's, you have to evolve it over years, and you develop more supplemental resources or more additions that bring in the community conversation of what excites people about that game after it having existed on the market and people incorporating it in their lives and their play patterns.
yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now what do I make now that I've talked to so many people about it, that then responds to that? And then like that's what a design, the design life of a particular like type of game that isn't based on a system becomes.
Right. I've got of all the games that we've done, I think there's only one of our games that has sort of like had enough life that it has like, the people who are writing the final, we've done 10 books in the Never Going Home series, which is our World War One horror game. And the
Yeah,
people who are writing the final adventures in the 10th book are people who have been fans of the game the whole time and have like pitched us adventures
Yeah.
the whole, like because they liked it from the beginning, right? And so it's like it really has become the community's game, and they've shown us what the game is because they're the ones who are writing it now. But like that
Yes.
is not every game gets to have that life cycle. It's a rare thing to like live long enough as a game that it finds a community that has people that want to make content for it that then gets turned into a thing. Obviously Dungeons and Dragons, the White Wolf stuff, like those are games that like now being written by fans,
Yeah.
of them, and but those are rare. Most games don't get that buzz and openness and life cycle, and it is pretty neat to see it happen. So
Yes.
yeah, I like, I don't know. Most things, yeah. More games need to have more, I don't know, buzz for them, I guess. Like
I
the industry keeps
know.
growing, right? Um,
Yes.
all right. Well, I don't know if we got to all the questions that I wanted to talk about, but we're almost at the end of our time. So, is there anything you want to plug about like what Scripted will be up to or you will be up to in the next 6 to 9 months? And then tell us where people can find you creatively and online. Where's your stuff? Where's
Yes.
it available?
Amazing. Yeah. So I do want to plug a couple things for scripted since that's a lot of what we've been talking about. Um, there's going to be like plenty of excitement coming up about this in the coming months. But we have sort of been letting people know it's going on. And if you're watching this, you're getting like kind of an early in on a big project, which is that we are going to be publishing a big storytelling RPG called Bloomfall. And
Moonfall.
yes, yes. It's so cool. So this is a game by Sharang Biswas and Yunsu Julian Kim,
What a
who
team.
have
What a team.
yes, exactly. Like absolutely like pro award-winning game designers. They worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender together and have designed just a plethora of games that I care so much about and love. And this game is a magical school game where you play as students at this kind of mysterious school on a barrier island called Promethean Academy, and the island is called Heartwood Island. And as you sort of arrive on the island and get settled in at school, you realize that the island has portals to this place called the Elsewhere, that is this sort of spooky place with weird plants and magical entities. And it's very much like a kind of storybook, like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of like vibe of like kids finding weird magic, stepping through a portal kind of vibe. And the cool thing about this game is that between sessions where you play as these kids, kind of finding out what's going on with this weird school, there are solo excursions that the players do independently. And the solo excursions all involve actually um, looking at, interacting with, and investigating plants in your real environment and bringing that writing and reflection back to the game and using those details for inspiration in what you contribute to the storytelling. So there's a little bit of an educational element to it if you want, but the idea is to have like an immersive embodied experience alternating with collaborative storytelling. And we actually have scientists contributing to this game because it is being published by Scryptid Games and also supported by the National Academy of Science.
Nice.
So there's some really cool muscle behind it in designing a game that is sort of cutting edge design by some of our best designers, and then also like um, lets you think about your relationship with plants and the natural world and incorporate that in an experience of play. So long winded, but I'm really excited about it.
I mean, all of those words sound amazing. I'm excited for that. That sounds great. And it's so both having worked with both of those designers on other projects and played their other games, like that exactly what they would make. And then the scripted collaborative idea about like Yeah, I mean it's kind of what we were talking about Assemblage. Like, oh yeah, get the Academy of Science to like help fund this and make this a thing. Like that. Yeah, do that. That
Yes.
sounds great. Um,
Yes.
very, very exciting to hear that. Moonfall. Looking
Yes.
forward to that.
Yeah, and what I'll say for that is we scriptedgames.com, that's SCRYPTID games.com. That's where all of our stuff is. Bloomfall is right on the homepage. You can go to scriptedgames.com/Bloomfall to check out the page about it. There's a sign up there, including you can get the quick start for the game if you're interested in seeing where it's at. We're actually kind of open right now, especially if you're like an industry person or just a big, like, long term RPG player and fan. We are actually looking for play testers to get involved with Bloomfall right now. So there's like lots of opportunities to kind of be an early in person and be part of the process as we bring it to market, like in the next like 6 to 9 months. So like I'm just inviting people to like check it out, like be
Yeah.
involved in it, get updates if you want that. So that's really like our big thing. We will be doing some really fun release stuff as well for Tales from the Cryptids, which is the anthology we talked about that you have a game in. We are definitely going to do some stuff in October, probably in the Baltimore area, to like get people together to just celebrate the book coming out. It will hit shelves in October, so just in time for Halloween. We're going to be
Right.
doing
That's the spooky season. So a cryptid book
yes,
is perfect.
yes, yeah. So we'll have it in October, and then it'll definitely be for sale at PAX Unplugged and other cons in the fall. Following whenever it actually lands
Right,
in
right.
October,
Do
and
you
then we're going to try
know?
to do stuff on into the next year for that too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you know if Scripted will have a booth at PAX Unplugged? I know it's been you've been trying to get a booth at PAX Unplugged and it hasn't exactly happened. Like you haven't had like a scripted home at PAX Unplugged, but
Yes,
do you,
no, we never can get a booth. We've tried really hard to get a booth, and we always get rejected. We like I usually sign up for the like booth thing like 5 minutes after it goes live, and
yeah.
I talk to the guy who coordinates it, and like no love for scripted this year, but we'll keep trying, and we will be collaborating with Jordan at Goose Poop Games to sell some of our stuff there and help sell
Okay.
the Goose Poop catalog as well. So
Yeah.
wherever Goose Poop is, that's where we'll be at PAX this year.
Jordan.
And I'm also maybe going to try to pitch an event at PAX this year. So I have a fun idea for a show that I want
Oh
to try to
yeah.
pitch.
Yeah, like
So
well, that people love those.
I
I
know.
hear people love those. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
all right. Any other places, social medias or anything, for you personally that you want to be connected with, or just send everybody to scriptedgames.com.
Yeah, I will say you can like check out my stuff too. I'm at Nat Mesnard on Instagram. That's NatMesnard. And my website, natmesnard.com, exists. I write, teach, and publish games.
Right.
And I also recently was like, oh, I'll put up a page for consulting if people ever are like, oh, I want advice on I've taught interactive fiction for 15 years and I'm a pretty good developmental editor. So like I'm definitely making myself available to the community as a resource. If my skills can help you, I want to do that. So like people can DM me or be in touch on Instagram or on my website for collabs and ways we can be connected with each other in games because that's how games get made. We hang out together, we talk about them, and we support each other. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something anyone listening, like, yeah, like definitely be in touch or come find me at PAX Unplugged because I just want to be friends. That's my vibe.
Nat, thank you so much for talking to me today for your time to talk about like your history and your games and some of your answering some big questions about industry stuff and philosophy of games and we've gotten into a little bit of all of it. But there's plenty more to talk about. We didn't really even talk about like the education side and like your conferences that you do and stuff like that, but like you got to
Yeah.
mention it there at the end.
Yep.
So Yeah, all the links to everything that you just said will be in the description of the video so people can find it. And yeah, thank you for being on Other Ink Thursday. Thanks.
Yay. Thank you.
And thank you everybody for watching this. Go check out Scryptid Games and get excited for all their releases, and we'll see you in the next one.